I want you to picture this. It's late at night. Your desk is covered with coffee cups, half-scribbled notes, and the faint glow of your laptop screen. You've been at it for hours. A project, a deadline, a goal you told yourself you'd finally nail. Your eyes sting, your neck aches, but you push through, because you've always believed that the harder you work, the closer you get to the result you want. It's what school taught you, what your parents told you, what every motivational poster you've ever seen seemed to scream. Work hard and you will succeed. But what if I told you there is a point where that hard work starts to turn on you, where pushing past your limits doesn't just fail to help, it actually makes things worse? That's the effort paradox. The strange truth that sometimes working harder can actually hold you back. Now, this might sound almost offensive to anyone who's been raised on the gospel of hustle. We've been conditioned to equate effort with virtue. We admire the people who get up at 4 a.m., who work until midnight, who grind relentlessly. And there's no question. Discipline and persistence are powerful. But here's the twist. More effort doesn't automatically mean more progress. In fact, there are situations where doubling your effort leads to diminishing returns, or even reverses the outcome you're after. Let me give you a small, relatable example. Think about trying to remember a name that's on the tip of your tongue. You focus hard, you strain, you almost feel your brain squeezing, and nothing. Then, hours later, when you're not even thinking about it, boom, it pops into your head. Gib. Why? Because in that moment, relaxing your effort allowed the answer to surface. It's a small thing, but it hints at a much bigger truth. Not all problems yield to brute force. This isn't just a quirky observation. There's science behind it. One of the most famous examples comes from sports psychology. Olympic coaches have observed that athletes who overtrain, pushing themselves past optimal intensity day after day, often see their performance drop, not just plateau. Drop. Muscles don't have time to repair. Reaction times slow. Injury risk skyrockets. Build body rebels against the very thing it's been trained to do. And here's the kicker. The athletes often feel like they're redoing the right thing because they're reworking harder than ever. That gap between what feels productive and what actually works, that's the heart of the effort paradox. And it's not limited to sports. In creative work, pushing too hard can kill inspiration. There's research from the University of Illinois on something called the incubation effect. They found that people who took breaks during problem-solving tasks often came up with more creative and effective solutions than those who powered straight through. When you step away, your subconscious keeps working, quietly, efficiently, without the pressure of your conscious mind trying to force a solution. Now, I can almost hear the pushback. Are you saying we should be lazy? That success just falls into your lap? Of course not. Effort matters. Hugely. The paradox is about balance. It's about recognizing that after a certain point, more of the same kind of effort doesn't just stop helping. It starts to harm. It's about working smarter and knowing when to ease up, so the work you've already done can actually bear fruit. Let's bring this down to a more human story. Meet Carlos, a fictional name, but a very real type of person I've known in different forms. Carlos was a young lawyer, fresh out of school, eager to prove himself. He took on every case, stayed later than anyone else, skipped vacations, answered emails at 2 a.m. At first, it worked. His bosses noticed. Clients loved his responsiveness. But slowly, cracks began to show. He started making small mistakes, misfiled documents, overlooked details. His patience with clients wore thin. His once brilliant arguments in court started to feel rushed and brittle. By year 3, Carlos was burned out. And here's the cruel irony. In trying so hard to be the best, he'd worked himself into being worse. Carlos's story mirrors what's called the Yerkes-Dodson Law in psychology. it's a simple curve that shows how performance increases with physiological or mental arousal, up to a point. Beyond that peak, more arousal or stress or pressure causes performance to drop. Too little effort and you're underput, too much and you're overloaded. The sweet spot is in the middle, where effort is focused but not frantic. And yet, our culture glorifies the extremes. The sleep when you're dead mentality. The idea that if you're not exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. We confuse motion with progress, busyness with productivity, exhaustion with achievement. And in that confusion, we run ourselves into the ground. You've probably seen this in your own life, studying for an exam until the words blur on the page, rehearsing a presentation so many times that you start second-guessing every sentence, working late night after night, only to find your brain fog so thick you make more errors than if you stopped hours earlier. And yet, in those moments the temptation is to push even harder, because stopping feels like failure. This is where the effort paradox becomes a trap, because it's not just about energy, it's about ego. We start to define ourselves by how hard we're working. If we're not grinding, who are we? And if we stop, what if everything falls apart? That fear keeps us locked in overdrive, even when the dashboard lights are flashing red. So how do you break free from this trap without swinging to the other extreme of disengagement? The first step is awareness, knowing your personal signs of diminishing returns. For some, it's when small mistakes multiply. For others, it is when you rereading the same line 3 times and it's still one T-stick. Maybe it's when you start snapping at people over minor things. These aren't just mood swings. They're indicators that your brain or body is operating past its optimal zone. The second step is to build strategic pauses into your work, not lazy pauses. Productive rest. This could mean taking a 15-minute walk when you're stuck, switching to a different type of task for a while. Or, yes, sleeping on it, too, because sometimes the most efficient way to solve a problem is to give your mind space to connect the dots. History is full of examples. The chemist Friedrich dreamed of a snake eating its own tail and woke up with the structure of the benzene molecule in his mind. Einstein famously said he often solved problems while playing the violin, letting his subconscious work in the background. These aren't accidents. They reproof that effort without recovery is like inhaling without ever exhaling. Of course. The challenge is that recovery doesn't always feel like progress in the moment. It's invisible. You can't took a walk on your resume. But over time, it's the invisible work, the restoration, that keeps your visible work sharp. Let's return to Carlos for a moment. After burning out, he was forced to take a 3-month leave. At first, it felt like failure. But during that time, he rediscovered things he hadn't done in years. Running in the park, cooking, reading novels. When he returned to work, something had shifted. He wasn't working fewer hours out of laziness. He was working smarter. He set boundaries on when he'd answer emails. He blocked time for deep work and refused to let meetings eat into it. He became more effective in 6 focused hours than he'd been in 12 scattered ones. The result? Better performance, more energy, and ironically, more recognition from his bosses. The effort paradox isn't about doing less for the sake of less. It's about recognizing that the right amount of effort, applied in the right way, can outperform blind, endless pushing. Kids, knowing when to lean in and when to lean back, so the work you've already invested can actually pay off. So here's the takeaway. Work hard, yes, but don't worship effort for its own sake. Measure your progress by results, not exhaustion. And remember, sometimes the smartest move you can make is to stop forcing the answer and let it come to you. Because in the end, success isn't just about how much you give. It's about giving enough, in the right direction, at the right time. And that's a lesson worth working for, but not overworking for. If you'd like, I can now create your SEO package Vitic, plus my style, your 40-scene storyboard with B-roll ideas, and 3 thumbnail prompts so episode 2 is fully production ready like episode 1. Do you want me to move straight into that?